This is absolutely heartbreaking. What happened to Becky Lynch yesterday is the kind of nightmare scenario that every wrestler fears, and the fact that it's happening at this point in her career, at this moment when she's on top of the world, makes it so much worse. I'm struggling to even put this together right now because the news that's coming out is devastating for Becky, devastating for WWE, and absolutely crushing for every single fan who's watched the man claw her way to the top of this industry. By the end of this video, you're going to understand why this injury isn't just bad, it's potentially career-ending, and why Becky relinquishing the championship might be the least of her concerns right now. Before I get into the specifics of what happened, you need to understand the context of where Becky was in her career. She was in the middle of one of the most acclaimed title runs of her entire time in WWE. The matches she's been having, the storylines she's been part of, the connection with the audience, everything was clicking at the highest possible level. There were plans, major plans, for Becky heading into Wrestlemania season. She was positioned to be one of the centerpiece attractions, potentially main eventing again, cementing her legacy as one of the greatest women's wrestlers of all time. All of that is now in serious jeopardy because of what happened during yesterday's match. The injury occurred during what should have been a routine title defense at a live event. Not even a televised show, not a pay-per-view, just a standard house show that most fans won't even remember happened. That's what makes this so cruel. Becky has worked major WrestleMania main events, she's had brutal cage matches, she's been through wars with the toughest competitors in the business, and she comes out of all of those relatively unscathed. But a random move during a house show match, something that's been done 1,000 times before without incident, and everything comes crashing down. The move itself was a standard sequence that Becky has executed countless times throughout her career. Her opponent went for a tackle or a spear-type move, Becky was supposed to leapfrog over, land on her feet, and continue the sequence. But something went wrong with the timing or the positioning, and instead of clearing the move cleanly, Becky came down awkwardly. The sound that echoed through the arena when she landed was described by people who were there as sickening, the distinct pop that wrestlers and hardcore fans recognize as the sound of something breaking or tearing. Becky immediately grabbed her knee and went down. This wasn't selling, this wasn't working the crowd, this was genuine agony. The referee threw up the X signal within seconds, and the match was immediately stopped. Medical personnel rushed to the ring while Becky was visibly in distress, and the way she was clutching her leg, the expression on her face, everyone in that arena knew they just witnessed something serious. The crowd went from cheering to complete silence as they watched the man, one of the toughest performers in the business, being unable to even put weight on her leg. What people don't know yet, what's only just starting to leak out from backstage sources, is that the preliminary diagnosis is absolutely brutal. We're talking about potential damage to multiple structures in the knee, the ACL, the meniscus, possibly the MCL as well. When you have a catastrophic knee injury like this, it's rarely just one thing. The way Becky landed, the angle her leg was at, the force of the impact, it created a perfect storm of stress on her knee joint that resulted in multiple tears and ruptures. This isn't a sprained ankle or a pulled muscle that heals in a few weeks. This is the kind of injury that requires major reconstructive surgery and months of rehabilitation. The immediate aftermath backstage was chaos. Becky was taken to a local medical facility for emergency evaluation, and the reports coming back to WWE officials at the arena were getting progressively worse as more testing was done. The initial hope was maybe it was a hyperextension or a bad strain, painful but manageable. But as x-rays were taken, as doctors manipulated the joint and felt the instability, the reality set in that this was a worst-case scenario injury. Becky herself reportedly broke down when the doctors gave her the preliminary assessment, because she knows what this means. She's seen other wrestlers go through similar injuries, and she understands the timeline and the uncertainty that comes with it. WWE management was immediately on the phone with their medical team, with orthopedic specialists, trying to get a full picture of the situation. But even before the official MRI results came back, the decision was being made that Becky would have to relinquish the championship. You can't have your champion out for 6 to 9 months, possibly longer, with no guarantee of when or if they'll return to the same level. The women's division needs to move forward, storylines need to continue, and as much as it kills everyone involved to make this call, the title has to be vacated. The announcement about Becky relinquishing the championship is expected to come within the next few days, potentially on the next televised show. WWE is still working on exactly how to handle it, whether Becky will be able to appear in person to give a farewell speech, whether they'll do a video package, or whether it will be a simple backstage announcement. The preference is for Becky to be there if she's physically able to, because having her address the fans directly would create the emotional moment that this situation deserves. But if the pain is too severe or if doctors advise against travel, WWE is prepared to handle it without her physical presence. What makes this injury particularly devastating is the timing relative to Becky's personal life and career trajectory. She's in her mid-30s, which in wrestling years means she doesn't have unlimited time left to reach her goals and add to her legacy. Every month away from the ring at this stage of her career is precious time that she can't get back. There were discussions about Becky potentially wrestling for another 5 to 7 years, maybe even longer if her body held up. But a major knee injury like this changes all of those calculations. The recovery isn't just about healing the physical damage, it's about whether Becky will ever be able to perform at the same level again, whether she'll trust that knee in high-impact situations, whether the psychological barrier of having suffered such a serious injury will affect her confidence. The financial implications for Becky are also significant. Champion-level talent gets paid more, gets better placement on cards, gets more lucrative opportunities outside of wrestling. Being out with an injury means missing out on all of those paydays. There's guaranteed contract money, of course, but the real earnings for top stars come from bonuses, from pay-per-view points, from merchandise sales tied to active storylines. All of that takes a massive hit when you're sitting at home rehabilitating instead of performing in front of audiences. For someone like Becky who's been busting her ass to maximize her earnings while she's at the top, this injury represents hundreds of thousands if not millions of dollars in lost opportunity. The women's division in WWE is going to be completely reshuffled now. The storylines that were planned around Becky's championship reign have to be scrapped or reimagined. Other women who were positioned as challengers now need new directions. There might be a tournament to crown a new champion, or they might just award the title to someone and build from there. Either way, the entire creative landscape of the women's division just got turned upside down because of this injury. Some women will see this as their opportunity to step up and fill the void, while others who were counting on working with Becky for their own career boost are now left without that platform. The reaction from Becky's peers has been an outpouring of support but also genuine sadness. Wrestlers know how devastating an injury like this can be, and seeing it happen to someone of Becky's stature and at such an important point in her career is sobering for everyone. There have been texts, phone calls, social media messages, all trying to lift Becky's spirits and let her know she's not alone in this. But all the support in the world doesn't change the reality that Becky is facing months of pain, surgery, rehabilitation, and uncertainty about her future. Let's talk about the surgery that Becky is going to need, because this isn't a simple procedure. ACL reconstruction, which is almost certainly going to be required based on the preliminary diagnosis, is major orthopedic surgery. They have to harvest a graft, either from Becky's own body or from a donor, and use that to reconstruct the ligament that was torn. The surgery itself takes several hours, and then comes the really hard part, the recovery. The first few weeks after ACL surgery are brutal. The pain, the swelling, the inability to move normally, the loss of muscle mass, all of it compounds to make this one of the most challenging injuries an athlete can face. The rehabilitation protocol for ACL reconstruction is intensive and lengthy. We're talking about daily physical therapy sessions for months, gradually progressing through stages of recovery from basic range of motion exercises to strength training to agility work to eventually returning to sport-specific activities. For a wrestler, the return to competition timeline is typically 9 to 12 months minimum, and that's if everything goes perfectly. If there are setbacks, if the healing doesn't progress as expected, if there's scar tissue or stiffness or other complications, the timeline extends even further. But here's what's really concerning and what WWE is worried about: even after wrestlers return from ACL injuries, they're never quite the same. The explosiveness might be diminished, the confidence in making certain moves might be affected, the fear of re-injury is always present in the back of their minds. We've seen it happen with other wrestlers who've suffered similar injuries. They come back, they're able to perform, but there's something missing, some edge or fearlessness that doesn't fully return. For someone like Becky, whose character is built on toughness and intensity, any diminishment of her physical capabilities could fundamentally change how effective she is as a performer. The mental and emotional toll of an injury like this cannot be overstated. Becky is going to go through stages of grief, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. Right now she's probably in the anger phase, furious that this happened, that it happened in such a meaningless context, that all her hard work and careful career management still couldn't prevent this random catastrophic injury. She'll question why this happened to her, what she could have done differently, whether she'll ever be the same performer again. These are dark thoughts that every injured athlete deals with, and having a strong support system is crucial for getting through this period. The immediate question everyone is asking is, who replaces Becky as champion? There are several contenders who could step into that spot, each with their own strengths and storyline potential. There could be a tournament to crown a new champion, which would give multiple women a chance to shine and build momentum. Or WWE could make an executive decision and just award the title to someone they see as ready to carry that responsibility. Either way, whoever becomes champion in Becky's absence is going to have the unenviable task of trying to maintain the prestige and relevance that Becky brought to that title. Those are incredibly big shoes to fill. Some names being discussed internally as potential championship replacements include established stars who could immediately step into that top spot and newer talent who this could be a breakout opportunity for. The decision isn't just about who's the best wrestler, it's about who's ready for that level of responsibility, who can handle the championship schedule and promotional requirements, who the fans will accept in that role, and who fits into WWE's long-term creative plans. This decision is going to have ripple effects throughout the entire women's division for months to come. There's also the Wrestlemania factor to consider. If Becky's injury had happened after Wrestlemania, it would still be terrible, but at least she would have had her big moment on the grandest stage. As it stands now, unless her recovery is miraculously fast and doctors clear her earlier than expected, which is highly unlikely with this type of injury, Becky is going to miss WrestleMania entirely. She won't be in the match she was being built toward, won't have the championship showcase, won't get that WrestleMania payday. For a top star, missing WrestleMania isn't just disappointing from a career perspective, it's financially devastating because that's where the biggest bonuses and opportunities come from. The plans that WWE had for Becky at WrestleMania are now being completely scrapped and reimagined with other talent. There were talks about dream matches, about potentially historic moments, about storylines that could have elevated multiple performers through their association with Becky's star power. All of that is gone now, and creative has to start from scratch building toward WrestleMania with a completely different women's championship picture. This isn't just a setback for Becky personally, it's a setback for WWE's entire creative direction for the biggest show of the year. Insurance and contract considerations are also coming into play. WWE has insurance policies on their top talent to protect against situations like this, but there are still financial and contractual complications. Becky's contract has certain terms related to her championship status and her position on the card. With her being unable to fulfill those obligations due to injury, there need to be negotiations about how that time is counted against her contract, whether her deal gets extended to account for the injury time, what her financial guarantees are while she's out, and what happens if she's unable to return at all. These aren't pleasant conversations to have, but they're necessary business discussions that need to happen. The psychological impact on the rest of the roster shouldn't be underestimated either. When a top star goes down with a serious injury, it reminds everyone of their own vulnerability. Wrestlers start thinking about their own bodies, their own injury history, whether they're next. It can create a more tentative atmosphere in the ring as people become more cautious, which isn't ideal for creating the exciting, physical product that fans expect. WWE is going to have to manage this situation carefully to make sure that one injury, as devastating as it is, doesn't create a culture of fear throughout the women's locker room. From a storytelling perspective, Becky's injury and title relinquishment creates an opportunity for fresh matchups and new directions, but it's an opportunity that nobody wanted to come about this way. WWE would much rather have Becky healthy and continuing her title reign than have to scramble to fill the void she's leaving. But in wrestling, you have to deal with the reality you're given, not the one you wish you had. Creative is already working overtime to figure out how to turn this real-life tragedy into compelling television that respects what happened to Becky while also moving the division forward. The fan reaction when this is officially announced is going to be massive. Becky has one of the most passionate and loyal fan bases in all of wrestling. People are invested in her character, her journey, her success. Seeing her have to give up the championship because of injury, not because she lost it in a match or because of a storyline, is going to hit fans hard. Social media is going to be flooded with support messages, with people sharing their favorite Becky moments, with expressions of hope for her recovery. But there will also be sadness, frustration, and concern about whether she'll ever be the same. Looking at historical precedents for this type of injury in women's wrestling specifically, the track record is mixed. Some women have come back from ACL injuries and returned to their previous form, continuing to have successful careers. Others have struggled with re-injury, with loss of confidence, with being unable to perform at the level they once did. Becky has age and experience on her side, which can help with the mental aspect of recovery, but she's also at a point in her career where her body has accumulated years of wear and tear, which can complicate healing. It's impossible to predict with certainty how her recovery will go, but the odds of her returning to exactly where she was are unfortunately not in her favor. The documentary potential of this is something WWE is already considering. If Becky is willing, they'd love to document her entire recovery process: the surgery, the rehabilitation, the setbacks, the small victories, the emotional journey. That kind of content could be incredibly powerful for WWE's streaming platforms and could help keep Becky relevant in fans' minds during her time away. It would also give Becky a platform to control her narrative, to show the reality of what athletes go through when they suffer major injuries. But that's a conversation that can only happen once Becky has had time to process everything and decide how public she wants to be with this difficult chapter of her life. Sponsorship and endorsement deals that Becky has could also be affected. Companies want to partner with active, visible athletes who are in the public eye regularly. An injured athlete who's out of competition for months is less valuable from a marketing perspective. Becky's team is going to have to navigate these relationships carefully, reassuring sponsors that she'll be back, maintaining her presence through social media and other channels, making sure that her brand doesn't lose momentum during her absence. It's another layer of stress and complication on top of everything else she's dealing with. The support system around Becky is going to be crucial. She's going to need family, friends, teammates, and professionals helping her through every stage of this process. The loneliness of injury recovery, especially for someone who's used to being in the spotlight and performing regularly, can be overwhelming. There will be dark days when the pain is intense, when progress seems impossibly slow, when doubt creeps in about whether all the effort is worth it. Having people who believe in her, who remind her of who she is and what she's accomplished, who push her to keep working even when she wants to give up that support network will make or break her recovery. Physical therapists who specialize in working with wrestlers and athletes are going to be essential. They understand the specific demands of wrestling, the movements and positions that Becky will need to be able to safely execute upon her return. They can tailor her rehabilitation to focus not just on general knee function but on the specific requirements of her craft. WWE has relationships with some of the best sports medicine professionals in the world, and Becky will have access to top-tier care throughout her recovery. That's an advantage that not every injured wrestler has, and it could make a difference in her ultimate outcome. The timeline everyone is going to be obsessed with is, when can Becky return? And the honest answer is that nobody knows yet. The official timeline won't be clear until after surgery, until doctors can assess the actual damage firsthand and create a recovery plan. But based on typical ACL reconstruction protocols and the additional injuries that are suspected, we're realistically looking at Becky being out until at least late 2026, possibly into 2027 if there are complications. That's a year or more of her career gone, a year where she's watching from the sidelines while other wrestlers get the opportunity she would have had. When Becky does eventually return, whenever that is, the pop from the crowd is going to be absolutely massive. A returning Becky Lynch after a serious injury, making her comeback, reclaiming her spot at the top, that's a moment that WWE can build an entire storyline around. The first match back, the first big feud, the eventual pursuit of championship gold again, all of that becomes a ready-made narrative that fans will invest in emotionally because they'll have watched her go through the struggle to get back. In some ways, this injury could set up the most compelling chapter of Becky's career when she returns, but only if she's able to return at a level where she can still perform. The question of whether Becky will ever hold a championship again is something that can't be answered right now. It depends entirely on her recovery, on how WWE's women's division evolves in her absence, on what her position is when she comes back. She might return to an immediate title shot as a returning hero, or she might have to work her way back up the card to prove she can still go at that level. WWE's approach to returning injured stars varies depending on circumstances, and where Becky fits when she's healthy again will depend on factors that won't be clear for many months. The legacy implications are worth considering too. Becky has already accomplished so much in her career: multiple championships, Wrestlemania main events, becoming the man and being the face of the women's division. But there was more she wanted to do, more goals she wanted to achieve. This injury might not prevent her from adding to her legacy eventually, but it definitely interrupts the trajectory she was on. History will remember Becky Lynch as one of the greatest regardless, but she'll always wonder what could have been if this injury hadn't happened at this particular moment in her career. The hardest thing for Becky is going to be watching WWE continue without her. Seeing other women get opportunities she would have had, seeing storylines play out that she should have been part of, watching someone else hold the championship she built up that's going to be painful in a different way than the physical pain of the injury. Athletes are competitive by nature, and being forced to the sidelines while others compete is psychologically torturous. Becky will have to find ways to cope with that, to channel her competitive drive into her recovery rather than letting it become bitterness or resentment. The announcement when it comes is going to be emotional. Whether Becky is there in person or appears via video, seeing her have to relinquish the championship, hearing her address the situation, watching her deal with this devastating development, it's going to be a moment that fans remember for years. WWE will try to handle it with the gravity it deserves, giving Becky the platform to say what she needs to say, to thank the fans, to make clear that this isn't the end of her story even though it feels that way right now. The outpouring of support she'll receive will be overwhelming, and hopefully it helps her through the darkest days of what's ahead. Becky Lynch losing everything: her championship, her Wrestlemania plans, nearly a year of her career, possibly her confidence and physical peak because of a freak injury at a house show is a tragedy in the truest sense. It's random, it's unfair, it's devastating. But if there's one thing we know about the man, it's that she's a fighter. She built her entire character and career on overcoming adversity, on refusing to quit, on clawing her way to the top against all odds. This is the biggest adversity she's ever faced, and how she responds to it will define the final chapters of her career. Right now everything looks dark and hopeless, but champions don't stay down. And Becky Lynch, even broken and facing the longest, hardest fight of her life, is still a champion in every sense that matters.